Welcome to Holyrude Ungagged, the Neil Anderson of political podcasts. Season 6, Episode 12. I am your host, David McClement, broadcasting from the Blantyre Free State, and this week we have a bit of a change to the regular format. We'll be having a kind of end-of-year review with some other members of the Ungagged collective, interspersed with a few unhinged rants from me about some recent news that got under my skin. So now that you're all thoroughly tantalised with that description, let's start with a rant, I think, and let's get ungagged.
It's a while, and it was nice to hear you smile. Dream a dream, 'cause you'll never die. The stars will never overtake the sky. Life has its turns and it takes a while, and it was nice to hear you smile. Nice to hear you smile. Nice to hear you smile.
This first topic is simply titled Starmer Loves Thatcher. Sir Keir Starmer was branded a Margaret Thatcher fanboy by a Tory MP after he lavished praise on Margaret Thatcher for effecting meaningful change in Britain. Writing in the Sunday Telegraph, the Labour leader said Thatcher had set loose her natural entrepreneurialism during her time as Prime Minister. The remarks were described as an insult to working class Scots by a former Labour MSP, Neil Findlay. Sir Keir's column was also criticised by the First Minister of Scotland, who said what Thatcher did to mining and industrial communities was not entrepreneurialism, it was vandalism. Starmer praising Thatcher as an insult to those communities in Scotland and across the UK who still bear the scars of her disastrous policies.
So does the Prime Minister share my boundless joy that on the road to Damascus, and in recognition of her great heritage and all that she achieved, another fanboy has joined her great belief, the leader of the opposition.
And that's the thing with Thatcher. She isn't just this historical figure. Her legacy lives on today, very much so, within the Tory party, within UK politics, within British society. And to have the leader of the Labour Party praising her like that is a complete insult to all the communities that suffered under her government. There's so many of her current problems can be traced back to actions that she initiated. She ripped up that post-war consensus that had led to unprecedented rises in living standards for working class people 30 to 40 years. She introduced the first seeds of NHS privatisation with the introduction of the internal market to the NHS. She introduced Section 28, which meant thousands of young LGBT people grew up in a situation of institutional homophobia, and now we're watching that similar moral panic be repeated now through transphobia. The housing crisis that's happening now and has been going on for a long time was precipitated by her introducing the right to buy. Now a lot of people, working class people, done well individually out of that. I don't criticise people individually that made that choice, but it was devastating to social housing stocks, and social housing in the UK has never recovered from all the stock that they lost during that time. And of course we can't forget that she gave us a poll tax, a horrific regressive tax. And although working class communities did rally and forced it to be abolished, we ended up with only slightly more palatable council tax that was cobbled together in the back of an envelope by John Major in the wake of the poll tax being defeated. And of course an inflexibility over the status of Irish Republican prisoners led to 10 men losing their lives in a hunger strike. But Keir Starmer thinks she's great. You know, it really says something when John McTiernan even criticised this contribution from Starmer. John McTiernan is a figure in the hard right of the Labour Party, I think, is generally supportive of Starmer, and he described it as an unnecessary article by Keir Starmer and an unnecessary nod to Thatcher. He said that he didn't think a Labour leader wanting to be Prime Minister needed to bend the knee to anybody in the Tory party. But of course that's what so many Labour leaders think they have to do now. Maybe not necessarily bend the knee to the Tory party, but certainly bend the knee to right-wing newspaper editors, to moneyed interests, to billionaires, and that's what Starmer's doing now. It's straight out of the New Labour playbook, with Tony Blair and even Gordon Brown, who's seen as a more traditional Labour figure. Both of them as Prime Ministers sought to sort of ally themselves with Thatcher and portray themselves as sort of continuing on in her footsteps. I think they both invited her to Downing Street. And at this stage, Keir Starmer is just looking like more and more like a New Labour tribute act. You know, Peter Mandelson, who's an advisor to Gordon Brown, advisor to Tony Blair, and is now advising Keir Starmer, has always been hailed as a shrewd political operator, like the master of the dark arts. But the reality is, he's got one idea, and now he's just repeating it. 30 years, almost 30 years, since the first time he did it with Tony Blair, and we're just rinsing and repeat. And at this stage in his career, Blair was still pretty popular as leader of the opposition. Keir Starmer is nowhere near that level of popularity. We've seen it most recently in relation to his inability to call for a ceasefire in Gaza and his support for Israel. The guy is at Tony Blair levels of unpopularity, but it took Tony Blair years as Prime Minister before he reached this kind of level of hatred that was directed towards him. And I'm all for a bit of hatred towards people that deserve it, and I would say they both do. Tony Blair led a illegal war that killed hundreds of thousands of people, and Keir Starmer's cheering on a genocide right in front of our eyes. But why is it that you can never hear about a Tory leader in the opposition feel obliged to praise like Clement Attlee or Harold Wilson? And I can't help but think it's because a lot of people in charge of the UK Labour fundamentally believe Britain's a Tory country, and the only way to convince voters to vote for you is if you make them think you're a Tory as well. But that just leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you don't think you're right, if you think that the Tories are right and tell people the Tories are right, how are you going to convince anybody otherwise? And there might be points in history where that might work temporarily, but if you just perpetuate the idea that Tory ideas are the right ideas, eventually they'll go back to the real Tories. There was some more comments from Labour figures critical of this. Monica Lennon, Scottish Labour MSP, said that Thatcher's legacy still haunts us, with many problems facing the UK today rooted in political and economic decisions made in the 80s. Whole communities destroyed, turbocharged inequality and mass unemployment. Lessons still need to be learned. And the heat even gets so bad that Anas Sarwar, who came out and said that Margaret Thatcher destroyed communities across the country and that she decimated Scotland. Well, here's an idea, Anas. Why don't you have a word with your boss? Tell him that, and ask yourself why your boss, the guy you work for, why is he praising a woman that you think decimated your country? You know, make it make sense to me. Tonight I'm being joined by the other VW, Ungagged's warrior poet, and Sky's mammy. It's Val Waldron.
Good evening, David. I'm glad that Sky woke me up. I was having a wee nap there, but here we are.
When you messaged me, I was confused with your emoji when you said that you'd fell and then you'd a wee sleeping emoji. So for a second, I thought you'd like fell down the stairs or fell over or something like that. I was like, oh my God, it's all right. You don't need to rush onto a podcast. Maybe you should seek medical attention.
The joys of a new phone. Just poked on the first wee thing that came up. But anyway, we're here and we're nearly at Christmas. But nice to have a wee chat about something else.
Yep. So how's 2023 been for you?
Well, it's been mixed, I would say. Lots of good things. I'll get you through the woes first. A few health issues, mostly around teeth and gums. Loss of a very good friend, unfortunately. But getting through all that stuff and some really nice travel things. I've probably bust my carbon footprint allowance, whatever, for a wee while now, but really nice to get abroad and do some things to follow up my hobbies, my fiddling away with the band to Germany and stuff. Did a Cayley and a couple of gigs in Kiel, which is really nice.
In Kiel, did you say?
In Kiel in Germany, yeah.
That's in the north of Germany, isn't it?
That is in the north. We've been before.
I remember that from, I think it was standard grade history and the Kiel Canal. I remember them talking about that.
Yeah, it coincided with some huge Northern European boating festival, apparently. It was boiling hot. It was lovely, very lively, so that was really nice. then back to Italy, to Barga, where we were the Scots Italians reading some poetry, which was lovely. So we've all the hobbies coming out, and some walking in the Alps, some nice bucket list stuff. Nearly everything accompanied by terrible, mostly Ryanair issues and delays and problems and rip-offs, etc. But so it'd be nice to have a wee break from going abroad next year anyway. So, but anyway, yeah, interesting.
Of all the criticisms of Ryanair, the only delays are the one thing that I've never really had with them.
Oh, is that right? Uh-huh. Well, I'll just give you a wee warning to everybody out there. Be very careful if you use a shortened name, such as I do, like Val, that you've got the same name on your boarding pass, because I had Valerie on my passport and it cost me an extra £220 in the end, plus a few more extra hassles and a feeling as though I was getting sent to prison by some of the people on the ground as well. Not very nice.
I had a similar experience, but it actually was... I was panicking before it, but it actually was fine. I was going on a stag night, and the guy that was organising it is the one that booked the flights and arranged all that. Now, my second name is McClement, as everybody listening might be aware, and it's spelled MCCLE. But when he handed me the boarding pass, I noticed one of the C's was missing. So it's MCLEMONT. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a disaster. It's Ryanair. You hear the stories. I thought they're going to want hundreds to change it. And the guy was saying, well, we just chance it. And I was like, I don't know about that. Maybe I think we'd be safer just fessing up when we get in. So we went in, and the woman took it, looked at it, and was, we'll sort that, and printed out a new one. Wow. I was talking to the guy at the other desk about what happened, and he went, did she print you another one? I was like, aye. And he went, she didn't charge you, did she? I was like, no, she didn't. He was getting angry on my behalf for something that didn't happen.
Very lucky there, aye, because they were picking on people that had, some people were wearing backpacks like elephants, but if they got away with it, that anybody pulling a case on wheels was getting sent away and charged as well. They were having a few days of it. So
yeah, that's the one I remember clocking that if you're a backpack, you didn't need to worry about them kind of looking too closely, because they kept an eye on people that had the trolley cases sort of thing.
Yeah. So there we are, the bad and the good.
What about news stories? We are a topical news podcast. So what's the main news story that you remember most from 2023?
Yeah, it's funny this one, because anybody that's ever kind of read any of my writing or Ungagged, to see I've got this kind of eagle eye for the bigger picture, and it's maybe not so much what news story, it's just a general trend that has really hit me this year. It's like the genie is out the bottle, and if you want to focus in on something today, I noticed, as others did, that there will be no appeal against the Section 35 about annulling the Gender Recognition Act that was passed last year. It just feels like another step towards, if you want to be kind of dramatic about it, fascism, if you like, or just kind of handing something to Westminster on a plate, just things getting a wee bit out of control. And it's like, during the last year, I suppose, we've seen the things happening, like that's one thing, and like we're on a slippery slope where anything goes, really. There was also the warnings around the bottle returns, what do you call that?
Bottle deposit scheme.
The bottle deposit scheme. And just this feeling that, this is not going our way, but also just this openly populist agenda coming up everywhere. Our cute and cuddly Radio Scotland and a lot of our news outlets are just sort of this like tirade of populist rubbish against the Scottish government, quite often unopposed. And like, I think obviously we're all going to be thinking a lot about what's been happening with Nicola Sturgeon. Just gone for her, basically. We don't know the outcome of that yet, but I think when they can demonise Jason Leach, that's quite an issue, really, isn't it? So things just seem to have kind of opened up. And then on a more sinister scale, I suppose we've seen more arrests at demos, stuff like that. A few years ago, people had been arrested, it would have been a massive thing, but now it's just happening all the time, mainly down south, but it's happening a lot. And then, I suppose, just on a more global scale, just there's no international checks and boundaries, and we don't know. Obviously, Gaza's the main one that all the vetoes and stuff. Nobody's seen it. Just everything's kind of going out of control. Which isn't very Christmassy or very appealing when you think of peace and love and joy to all men, but it's worrying. It just looks as though the genie's right out the bottle, and I suppose it could culminate next year in a US president operating from jail or something ridiculous like that.
Have you got any political predictions for 2024?
Well, do you want me to try and narrow it down a wee bit? That went all over the world, didn't it? Yes, for one event, and it was a wee soaring there, but obviously, doesn't it take a genius to know we're going to have a general election? We don't know when. And it looks as though there's going to be a Labour win, but I predict that can turn in a sixpence. It might not be such a big win as predicted. We've had a lot in the news lately about the COVID inquiry, a lot of rubbish coming up that is putting people off the Tories, but things can change quite a lot, and it didn't go down all that well in Starmer's comments about Thatcher. You could see the polls shifting a wee bit quite quickly. So yeah, it'll be a Labour win. In Scotland, I think we'll be running for our lives to try and keep Labour at bay. I think that's quite an uphill push, but I would not like to predict that one at all. I don't think it's going to be an easy year. I wish I could say something optimistic. Can you think of anything where things may?
I mean, we should be optimistic about the Tories being voted out of power, but such is the prospect of a Starmer-led Labour Party in power, it's difficult to get too excited. It's hard to imagine they can be worse than the Tories. They will probably be marginally better, but marginally better than one of the worst governments we've had to experience is barely anything to be excited about. So I wish I could be more optimistic, but I'm afraid I'm kind of a similar viewpoint to you.
Yeah. I mean, I found myself at one point, not so very long ago, when Biden was, full support for Israel, thinking, Christ, could Trump be much worse? And I had to pull myself back from that one because the man's crazy. We really do not want the most evil-looking, horrible comic book character back again, and we do not want anybody operating from jail if he ever gets that far. But it's scary stuff. It's pretty scary.
I mean, it's kind of what we're just talking about in the UK government there's a symmetry there in America because, you've got Biden who pursuing quite a right-wing foreign policy that's not that out of step with what traditionally the United States has done, but, the only alternative apparently is like an absolutely crazed lunatic like Donald Trump. It's hard to be excited about Biden, but looking at the alternative, it's an indictment of the political systems on both sides of the Atlantic that they keep throwing up such horrendous options, like quite literally like the lesser of two evils. And it's like, for once, it would be nice if we didn't have to vote for evil at all. It'd be quite a novel concept.
I just don't know what's happened. I mean, of all the humans on the planet, why have we got these people? And I mean, even in our own country, it's brilliant. I'm so glad that Humza Yousaf got in. My God, the alternative was not great. But why was there one good person? Like, how could we not? Maybe, is it so daunting for good progressives on this planet? I mean, look at what happened. I've forgotten her name already. The New Zealand Prime Minister. Is her name not Jacinda?
Is it Ardern, was it?
That's it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, there are good people. We know there are good people in politics, but it's hard, and I have a lot of sympathy for them. It's quite a challenge. But there's I think we have to keep remembering there's an awful lot more of us than there are of them. And I think, I'm going to be a wee bit optimistic here. I mean, amidst all the horrible, just unbelievably unspeakable things happening in Gaza at the moment, public are out en masse every week or most weeks. People are responding to that, and the masses are on the right side of history, and even people like Starmer and Biden are watching their language a wee bit. And okay, they're maybe it's like they've had their quota of civilian deaths. Enough is enough, and that's not a good thing. But at least they can't go on saying, well, pause for a bit or whatever. It just can't go on like that. So people power. I think that's about the only optimistic thing I think we've got at the moment.
Let's move on to something a wee bit more light-hearted.
What's
your favourite Christmas food? What you look forward to tucking into on Christmas Day?
Well, it'll be down to me because I'll be making the nut Wellington for the family. Well, it's a vegan thing, but this will be so since we've been making nut Wellington since the 70s, I think, or 70s or 80s, when it was fashionable then, when Wellingtons have come back into fashion again. So yeah, we'll be having that.
My wife loves Wellington.
All right. What kind of Wellington?
Beef Wellington usually,
Yeah.
but we've got a venison Wellington because we couldn't find any beef. It's quite hard to find. I think I saw a mushroom Wellington somewhere, but
Lidl have got some interesting looking Wellington.
I think that's where she got that. I was in
Yeah.
Asda and I couldn't see any at all.
Yeah. And Mike will be making, my husband will be making a nice frangipan thing, so that'll be nice. But I can't say I have deprived myself. I've just helped, well, others have helped me put away a big tray of tablet, which is something that I've been making for social occasions lately.
So you posted a picture of that and I immediately messaged you just to let you know what a big fan I am of tablets. So
Well, there's 5 bits left, but I won't taunt you with them. If I could shove one through the screen, I would. But,
well, it's my birthday next month, so if you're making another batch, I'll not say no.
right, okay. If you're anywhere in the area, we'll get you some. But
What about your favourite drink to toast in the new year?
I'm boring. I'd go for a Prosecco. And I'm also a wee bit, a little bit cynical about the new year, I guess, maybe partied out. But then, often there's nothing much happening anyway, because I don't have one huge sort of like cohesive group of friends that does something. But the band that I'm in, they were all going off to Achille this year, and I'd rather be on the other side. I quite like sitting watching other people do the work. So I actually turned it down. I thought, no, I'm going to sit at home. Last year, husband had COVID and we spent the whole period in separate rooms. So quiet time at home together this year. So.
Well, I'm working at New Year, so...
Oh, are you working at the shift?
It'll be a soft drink if I toast it, at all, but... Yeah, I've been working the last 5 or... This might be my 6th New Year in a row I've been working.
Are you not bothered? Are you okay with that? You get a choice?
Given a choice, I'd rather have Christmas off with the kids. And I was never a big fan of New Year, but I do find I'm starting to miss it a wee bit now that it's getting to 5th and 6th years of not being able to celebrate it. So maybe next year I'll be in a different situation.
You're bidding early, but you'll be, your kids will be well wound up now for Santa, are they?
Oh, they've been absolutely wild. A couple of them have just gave up sleeping the last 2 nights. It's just been, me and my wife are frayed at the edges with them, so hopefully they settle down.
What about the wee boy, Matthew? Does he know about it all yet?
Yeah, well, his nursery had a party today, so he got to meet Santa, and apparently he was terrified.
Oh, yeah.
Was running and hiding and wouldn't even look in Santa's direction, according to the staff, so...
It's the white gloves. I see the little kids with these white gloves round about them. I think, oh, that's no right, what a shame.
Anyway, thanks for joining us, Val. And
yeah, pleasure, David.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year when it comes.
You too.
The next topic in my agenda this evening is the Elgin Marbles, or the Parthenon Marbles. Diplomatic row has broken out between the British and Greek governments over the Parthenon sculptures, also known as the Elgin Marbles. Removed from Greece in the 19th century by British diplomat Lord Elgin, who later sold them to the British government, the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis was due to meet Rishi Sunak in London, but Number 10 cancelled the meeting at the last minute. He told reporters he was deeply disappointed by the abrupt cancellation and rejected an alternative meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister. The cancellation came a day after Mr Mitsotakis told the BBC that the marbles should be returned, as having some of the artefacts in London and the rest in Athens was like cutting the Mona Lisa in half. Before I get started on this, I want to make a confession. I was way older than I care to admit before I realised that the Elgin Marbles were statues and not actual marbles that you play with, like the marble game, like the wee balls basically. I'm not sure when it exactly that dawned on me, but I was a bit embarrassed to think, and I was just glad that I never actually said it out loud. Although now I'm saying it out loud in a podcast, so I don't really know what the point of that is. The main point is the British government should be returning these artefacts. The British Empire took different artefacts from all over the world, and it was because they had this superiority complex that they thought all these cultures were backwards and they couldn't be trusted with their own cultural heritage. And to be honest, when you dig into some of the statements for the government about this, some of the statements for the British Museum, I think they still think that. They know now know to say that bit out loud. But deep down, there is still this arrogance that they still have this idea that they're safer with them because they're civilised, and by extension, they're implying that that other cultures, other peoples are not civilised. I mean, to me, the legal argument's irrelevant. I mean, the UK government's position is that Lord Elgin obtained them legally and sold them to the government. Now, that is disputed. Greece was controlled by the Ottoman Empire at the time, and the modern Turkish government, that's a sort of successor state to the Ottoman Empire, has never been able to find a record of the sale in any of their archives. But even if there was a bit of paper, would a British lord probably bribing some low-level Ottoman official really make this okay? I mean, he says he was trying to save them, but one of the ships transporting them sank. I mean, it was a miracle that they were recovered. I mean, these things could have been lost to humanity forever, and that all because of the benevolent Brits that were convinced that they were saving them for posterity. You would think that the UK government would be trying to make friends at the moment. You know, they've alienated everybody over Brexit, but here they are getting into a spat with Greece over some statues. You know, would it not be much better to make a gesture of reconciliation, to hand these back and to build a new relationship, a more positive relationship with an EU member state, since Britain is a bit potty on Europe as a fart in a spacesuit? But the UK government just can't seem to get out of its own way. You know, they have this arrogant mindset that they can't shake, and a lot of the stuff around Brexit was delusions of empire that some people just seem to want to hold on onto. And I must admit though, you've got to admire the brass neck to rename the statues after the guy that stole them. I mean, that is the most British thing I've ever heard.
Our sponsor this week is Sense of Nature Pet Service, based in central Scotland. Sense of Nature gives you a hands-on, personalised experience with a variety of exciting creatures, from snakes and skunks to tarantulas and turtles. Sense of Nature has something for everyone. They offer sensory sessions, one-to-one and group sessions, educational encounters for children of all ages, and they are available for private events upon inquiry. Animal welfare is at the forefront of everything they do, and if appropriate, a risk assessment can be carried out at no additional cost prior to your booking. To get 5% off your next booking with Sense of Nature, quote Holyrude Ungagged 5 at time of booking. To contact Sense of Nature, you can do so by email on sense.of.natureinquiries@outlook.com. You can also find them on most social media platforms by searching for Sense of Nature.
The next contributor this evening, journalist, activist, Republican socialist, and Dundee's favoured son, Connor Beaton. If I had more time, I would have added mulled wine enthusiast.
I'll get to that. Thanks, David.
Hey Connor, how are you doing? How's things?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm looking massively forward to the year ending. I've got one half day of work left, but before I'm off till the 4th of January, and I couldn't be happier about it.
Oh, it'll fly in. So the first question was, how's 2023 been personally? But it's sounding it's not positive then if you're looking forward to ending so much.
Nothing actually wrong with the year. I'd actually say it's probably been a pretty unremarkable year for me personally. I think it's just every time it gets to this time of the year, I just can't. Everything's downhill. I can't look forward to anything more than it ending. Probably the most significant thing I did this year was the drive. So I've been taking lessons pretty much every week since April, and I've not sat my test yet, but it's going to be early in the new year, basically as soon as the DVLA can actually find an examiner for me. Feeling pretty good about that.
So is this your first attempt?
Yeah, so I've never driven at all before I took my first lesson in April. I feel like age of 27, probably about time that I got there. And my partner's been pushing me like mad for years now to learn to drive. I'm pretty happy that I'm finally just about there. And I had a test originally scheduled for October and it got delayed because there was just no chance of me passing it. But I feel pretty confident now.
Well, I hear all the best people take five attempts. I only learned in 2015, so I was like in my 30s, so you'll be ahead of me if you're successful next year. But I did originally take lessons when I was 17 for like a year, sat my test 3 times and gave up on it. My heart was never really in it. It was everybody else around about me kept saying, oh, you're 17, you need to learn to drive. So I really resented getting up my Saturday morning to take my lesson every week. And I never really particularly liked driving. So after the 3rd attempt, I was not going to persevere.
Well, see, I'm not keen on becoming a motorist. I never really wanted to become a motorist, and I'm still a public transport enthusiast, but it's just an unfortunate reality that there are places where you really need a car to be connected. And, we've been thinking in terms of like every time we've moved house and we rent, so it's inevitable we're going to move again. It's such a nightmare if you can't drive. If you're thinking about going on holiday, just doing a weekend break, it's a nightmare if you can't drive. And even, looking at this winter in particular, how much the public transport network, including especially the trains, fell apart because there was a bit of rain. With the climate crisis, there's only going to be more of that. So yeah, I'm not enthusiastic about it, but I am going to become a motorist.
It's funny you should say that about moving. That was actually the reason that motivated me to finally pass my test. My flat that I lived in before I lived here was in a main street, so it was in a bus route, and there was a train station at the end of the road, so it was perfect. So I had no reason to drive really. But when we were moving house, we had already a lot of sort of things we needed. Like my mum was moving into us for caring reasons, so we needed like things that were appropriate for that. And we're thinking, well, with kids, so maybe a garden would be good. So it was just like one extra thing for me to then be putting my hand up at the end going, oh, remember it needs to be near a bus stop.
Yeah, well, to be honest, the amount of time I walk to the shops and have to lug back all of our big shopping in one go. And I'll look forward to eventually being able to pick up shopping by car.
I tend to do that now, but if you don't pass your test, have a baby, because the buggies are like brilliant. So there's always options.
I'll picture that to the other half.
Particularly since the self-scanners thing came in. You just scan it and put it straight in the bottom of the buggy, and that's you. I'll get a comment from the news saying, oh, you should boycott these scanners, they're taking people's jobs. You have to support workers, but just pretending technology doesn't move on doesn't work either. And to be honest, there's always workers standing around having to help people because nobody can use the scanners right. So I don't really feel as if it's caused a huge reduction in supermarket staff.
Well, it's like Aldi near me now has self-checkout, and I think it's brilliant because you can actually get a kind of a relaxed experience. You can take a lot longer to hang your stuff when you have it all kind of thrown at you in rapid succession. So
yeah, and it's great for introverts everywhere because you don't need to have an awkward social interaction. So
got to practice somewhere.
In terms of news stories, what would you say is the news story you most remember from 2023?
Well, I mean, I think the news story that I'm going to remember most for years to come is going to be Gaza, obviously what's been happening there. And I think the Scottish dimension to that will always stick out in my mind is Nadia Al Nakla's parents being under bombardment in Deir al-Balah, seeing the kind of blow-by-blow updates in the Scottish and the UK press. I think for two reasons. One, because Nadia I've known in Dundee for a long time before she became the First Minister's wife, because she was really active in the Yes campaign in 2014, and of course she's a local councillor now as well. So I think that probably brought home for a lot of people just how bad it was in Gaza and still is. And then also the fact that she's the First Minister's wife and she still can't do anything about her family being out there, I think just underlined how powerless everyone felt, but even the people who ostensibly have a bit of power probably felt. So yeah, I think that'll stand out to me. I fear I'm going to be guilty of like recentism here, and that obviously that's a big news story that's still ongoing. And there's a lot of stuff probably towards the start of the year that I've already forgotten, but I think that probably says a lot for why this is going to be the thing that I'll remember.
Yeah, definitely recency bias, because when I ask people this question, nobody's mentioned Thor the Walrus that appeared in January in the British shores. Poor
or
Thor.
The coronation, for God's sakes, which
well, that's it. Did we have a change? Did we change a Prime Minister? I feel as if we do that every year now. A new monarch and a new First Minister. It has been quite a big year, considering there's not really been... There hasn't been any elections. I'm not going to make a fool of myself. Considering there's not been like big elections, there's been big changes.
Yeah. Well, I think technically Charles, he became king last year. So the coronation was just really the pomp and everything that goes along with it. And I don't think that will be, to me, an exceptionally memorable thing, even though I really enjoyed the little renaissance of republicanism that was inspired by Charles. And of course, you and I were both at that Colton Hill rally that I thought was really good. And that, certainly a kind of a political highlight from the year. But I don't believe in thinking of this as the year of Charles. So I don't think it'll be the one that lingers in my memory.
It's funny, the things that stick in your mind or kind of trigger something. See, whenever there's like a lawyer on and they're referred to as a KC, I find it very jarring. It's just, I don't know how long it will take to get used to it, but it just doesn't sound right. QC just seems to have a more natural ring to it. But
I mean, I work as a legal affairs journalist, so I see the word KC, very regularly. And still this week, I saw it in a headline, and I thought there was a typo, and it was meant to say KFC.
But getting back to Gaza, yeah, I every time it comes up, I feel a kind of weird sense of guilt because I feel as if, as a kind of political person in the left, we all sort of forgot about the Palestinians. I remember when I got into politics 20 years ago, the Palestinian plight was always not far from the surface. At every meeting you spoke to, you went to, there was always somebody with a Palestinian scarf and things like that. And it was just always a political thing that rumbled away in the background. And at some point it just went away, and there's guilt because it's like their suffering sort of became tolerable. And so it's became very jarring to it suddenly erupt the way it has. And I felt it as well watching when Hamza Yusuf was speaking in the Parliament, and there was a personal connection that you spoke about. And it sort of felt very like a horrible metaphor for Scotland's situation. That as First Minister of Scotland, he really, the limit to his power was to beg louder. He didn't really have any leverage beyond, making as strong a public appeal as he could.
I think to me, it's been useful. I feel like useful is actually maybe a kind of not a good word to use, but it's underlined for me the importance of independence in the context of the Labour Party coming back, and people losing faith that there will be a referendum because of how intransigent the UK government has been. It's been really useful to have this reminder of, no matter, like, the most radical unionist vision for Scotland, where it's the most devolution of power, etc. There's always the two things that they say can safely stay at Westminster: it's foreign affairs and defence. And I can't think of an event of the last few years that hasn't illustrated better why I don't want foreign affairs and defence to be staying in Westminster, where there's two parties equally committed to supporting Israel as they do the most heinous war crimes against a civilian population. And so it's been a really good reminder of why independence has to remain this really important political objective for us. And the other thing you mentioned there about Palestine solidarity kind of retreating from the mainstream over the last few years, I think I actually feel, and some people may disagree with me, there's been a lot of parochialism in the last few years around Palestine, where because of the Jeremy Corbyn leadership of the Labour Party and the way in which there was all these discussions around Palestine and also around anti-Semitism on the left and everything that came out of that, there was this whole period whereby if you looked at local Palestine solidarity groups, a lot of them were doing things like public meetings to talk about the internal disciplinary processes of the Labour Party. And I think I just don't see how that was useful for building a solidarity movement, because I think most people don't really care about that. And I think most people who really want to do something that meaningfully supports people in Palestine don't want to come to a meeting to hear about how some people have been kicked out of the Labour Party, perhaps unjustly, perhaps justly. It just feels like a distraction. And I think, it's been really good to see people out in these big mass mobilizations, which, by the way, I think are only possible because of the cumulative political education of all the demonstrations that have taken place over the last few decades. We came into the conflict, we came into October 7th with there being so many people in Scotland who already had a really, really good understanding of the issues in Palestine, and that was only because of the work the movement had done. But I think it's really good that we've got this kind of orientation now towards building pressure on the UK government, building international pressure against Israel, building the boycott movement, which is still this really important component. I think that's really useful, and I'm glad that we can kind of get away from the kind of internal party factional disputes that were just serving as this massive distraction for the Palestine movement.
Yeah, I totally agree about the political education, because you see it online, and there is a kind of body of people out there that I think are genuine in their approach, that they don't really think this really started, there was anything before October 7th. And a lot of people will be disingenuous about that. But I think there is genuinely people out there that had no idea about this situation until October 7th. And that's a starting point. But like you said, there's a lot more people out there that do have a more rounded view of the situation and know better than that. And is able to put it in its proper historical context. But unfortunately, we'll probably be sitting here. We could have this conversation next year as well, because it's such an intractable situation. I'm joining you in the sort of negativity. I don't usually need encouragement. I'm always getting into trouble for particularly for ending podcasts and downers, but
there we go.
Something a bit more. Let's go a bit more light-hearted now. So, what would you say is your favourite food at Christmas to look forward to? What do you like getting tucked into?
If I'm having a traditional Christmas dinner.
So, are you vegan or vegetarian before?
No. I eat everything.
It's always good to check in left-wing circles, because
yeah, well, I say that, but basically all of our friends are either vegan or vegetarian. I'm in a tiny minority of my own friend circle in that I eat meat, and it even it impacts things like I was thinking of getting a barbecue. I still want to get a barbecue, and my partner keeps pointing out that if we got a barbecue and we invited people around, we would be ourselves relegated to like a little disposable thing to keep all the meat all the meat off the main barbecue for everyone else. So not the most appealing. But yeah, sorry, Christmas dinner. If it's a traditional Christmas dinner, the bit I look forward to the most, it's actually the parsnips. I really love like honey roasted parsnips. Fantastic. And I feel like it's not something I eat any other time of the year. So that would be my go-to. But I think most years actually I wouldn't say it's untypical, but I normally don't have a traditional Christmas meal with a bird. I think more often than not, I've ended up having something kind of unorthodox. One year actually, my mum bought like a raclette machine out of Lidl, and we all had raclette for Christmas dinner, and it was actually not bad.
I don't even know what that is.
It's like so like raclette is like a type of cheese, and the raclette machine is basically like a grill where you get like a little pan and you put like an assortment of meats and veg on it, and you put cheese on top, and then you put it on the grill so the cheese all melts.
That sounds pretty good. Sounds like a
pretty good.
middle class cheesy beano.
A cheesy beano? I've never heard of that.
You don't know what a cheesy beano is? It's
That's
like
from Dundee. Sounds like it should be.
It should be with the name like beano, I suppose. It's like at my primary school. This is what primary school dinners were like in the 80s. It was like half a roll with baked beans with melted cheese, sealing the beans in.
Fair enough. Yeah, that sounds like the Scotch.
What about New Year? What was your favourite drink to toast in? If I gave it away already with the mulled wine?
Yeah, you're looking at it, David. It's got to be mulled wine. Glühwein is the best. If champagne is on offer, I wouldn't say no to a bit of champagne for New Year's, but it's winter. I want something warm. I want something tasty. I am a sucker for German style Christmas markets. I don't think there's actually any in Scotland that hold a candle to ones in Germany. But winter comes round and I have as much mulled wine as I possibly can.
I quite like mulled wine. I was in Berlin is when I tasted it. I went to Berlin for a weekend in December, not with any concept of how cold Berlin in December apparently is. So me and my friends were running from sort of Christmas market to Christmas market, desperate to get another Glühwein to just heat up and try to survive.
Would you get it with a shot, or do you just have it by itself?
I didn't know you could get it with a shot, but I would probably, if that was on offer, I would have said yes, but I don't think it was offered. The massive cinnamon stick sticking at the top.
There's also another thing, I can't remember what it's called now. My mother keeps reminding me, but they do a similar thing where it's a hot drink and they kind of pour it over this giant block of sugar, and it's like really sweet and really alcoholic.
Sounds right up my street. Never heard of it, but it sounds right up my street.
They do it the same stalls that they do mulled wine, but I only had it for the first time last Christmas, and let me tell you, really, really good. If I ever remember what it is called, I'll tell you.
Really sweet and really alcoholic. I get a friend Andy that could fit that description. We've covered 2023. Let's look at 2024. What about any political predictions?
Do I have to stay positive?
No, we'll keep to the theme of depression.
Yeah, all good. Well, I saw that Rishi Sunak finally described 2024 as election year, so I think the speculation of the election getting pushed to January 2025 is off. We'll definitely have an election next year, so I think that means we are looking at Keir Starmer becoming Prime Minister next year, and I think that'll be a disaster. We're still going to have austerity, we're still going to have racist anti-immigration policies. Scotland, we're still going to have refusal of a second independence referendum, and based on the reaction to the Section 35 route, we're still going to see this kind of pressure on reversing devolution. And I mean, I personally think the SNP is going to get a pretty awful beating in the election. See how it ends up, but I suspect it will be pretty brutal. But if nothing else, I think we'll find out pretty quickly what exactly it means to have a Labour government in. And I think that can only be good news to the independence movement. I don't really believe in the doom mongering that the second Labour come in, nobody will want independence anymore. I think it'll actually probably be the opposite, because right now you can pitch it as everything's going to be great and reality will kick in. And then in Scotland, out with that, well, we've just seen the budget and it's pretty brutal for a lot in a lot of areas that are cuts. I think especially housing has been singled out as an area that's got some pretty devastating cuts. So I think we should probably brace ourselves for a big round of public sector strikes in local councils in particular. You know, we already saw some this year in terms of like schools and nurseries. But if we have compulsory redundancies in any councils, and if we have major closures like schools or libraries, then I think we could be looking at a lot of industrial action. And quite right. I think if any council workers are coming out and strike next year, I'll be standing with them, obviously supporting them. Even though, you know, times are tough, the Scottish government, I feel, has there's so much cash sitting on the table in terms of tax raising powers that haven't been used. You know, there's a lot of discussion about how we should be taxing wealth, for example, through land value tax. And it just doesn't seem to be happening because we're having this weird conversation now where you raise tax and over people making over £75,000 and it's treated like you're punishing the little guy. That's going to be a huge theme next year, I think. So we're going to see austerity kind of back in force and hopefully a trade union movement that's willing to meet it.
Yeah, there's been some absolutely willful ignorance about how tax codes work online today. I think it was the National put out like a debunking thing saying you're not going to get 45% of your salary taken off you just with this announcement.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't get my head around it because it's not like people don't pay tax and should have a reasonable understanding of how it works. You know, they look at their paycheck. So I don't get why people are so easily bamboozled in this.
Maybe we should have a diagram and a pay slip or something. Instead of just having a line that says you've paid this much in tax, it should be a pie chart or something so people can understand. I don't know. But it's so funny to me seeing people kind of tying themselves in knots saying, well, if you imagine this hypothetical scenario where all these 5 things are true, then your very modest £100,000 salary won't actually be that much, you know? It's ludicrous. And I mean, it's also ludicrous to look at historically what income tax rates were in the UK. And as recently as Thatcher, you know, you could have had top marginal income tax rates that were closer to 80% than 50%, and yet people are freaking out about what we've got now.
I always sort of console myself though when there's these kind of freak outs that when it gets implemented and people realise that suddenly they're not going to be losing any more money, or if it is, it's very marginal, that people will calm down and it'll be a short-term sort of reaction and panic. The weird thing is it doesn't seem to stop it happening the next time. I guess we're just stuck in that cycle.
There's a point that's been made quite well, that discussion of all these high earners are going to move to England. I think the point's been really well made is like, there's not really many circumstances in which you'll save money by doing that because the cost of housing is so much greater there. So many other costs, and especially if you're a parent, you've got kids that are going to university, etc., you're just going to lose out so much by doing that to save a few £100. But it's occasionally come up. I know that there's some senior Scottish lawyers who have said that they'll move over the border. And I think, you know, the government should be more combative in challenging these people. I think, you know, if you're talking about a senior lawyer skipping over the border to save tax, I think we should introduce a rule that just says if you don't live in Scotland, you can't practice in the Scottish courts. If you want to move to Berwick, that's fine, but you'll have to build up a practice in the Berwick courts and see how well that does for you.
And also, we put too much stock in it. It's very easy for people to say, oh, well, I'll just move to England then. It's easy to say that, but how many people actually do it? How many people, every time an election cycle comes round, how many rich Tories say, oh, if a Labour government come in, I'm moving? You know, they're still there saying the same thing 5 years later. People do not move to save a wee bit of tax. The only people that do that are the mega rich that don't really live in a specific place anyway, and their change of address is really just a paper exercise. Before we finish up, I need to get you on record with your New Year's resolutions so we can hold you to account. Are you a person that normally makes resolutions?
I kind of half-heartedly make a resolution. I mean, it's to the point where I couldn't tell you what my resolutions were last year, if I even had any, or the year before that. And, you know, all the typical ones apply. You know, I want to be saving money better, I want to be exercising more, etc. But I think the one that I would actually really like to commit to, and that you're welcome to hold me to account to, is that I want to write more in the new year. And I should clarify, because I am a full-time journalist, I mean writing for not getting paid for it. You know, writing about politics, writing about the lettering for the independence movement. something I really enjoy doing. I think it helps me work through my own thoughts and things. And I'm on the editorial board of a socialist magazine called Heckle. I want to really, I want to write some more for that, and I really want to take the time to, maybe go and visit people in different parts of the country and find out what's going on there. Hopefully, I can get started on that early in the new year.
Well, Ungagged will be happy to publish too if you're willing to pick up your pen. Well, thanks very much, Connor. It's been great talking to you.
Thanks, David.
Have a good Christmas and Happy New Year when it comes.
A Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and the whole Ungagged team as well.
The next item on the agenda this evening, there has been a change to the immigration rules in the UK. The UK government has introduced measures it promised would deliver the biggest ever cut in net migration after levels soared to a record high. Home Secretary James Cleverly announced a 5-point plan to curb immigration, which he said was far too high. The changes include hiking the minimum salary needed for skilled overseas workers from $26,200 to $38,700. Mr Cleverly claimed 300,000 people who were eligible to come to the UK last year would not be able to in future. The minimum income for family visas has also risen to $38,700. In a statement to MPs, the Home Secretary said migration to the UK needs to come down and that there had been abuse of health and care visas for years. However, crucially, health and care workers, who account for almost half of people on work visas, will be exempt from the increase. I mean, even before we get into the detail of this, it's just this thing that is becoming just accepted in UK politics, that immigration is negative and is bad and is something to try and stop or mitigate. Immigration is natural. Every country in the world, every civilization, going back to the dawn of time, has had migration and people moving from one place to the other. That's how cultures evolve. That's how cultures change over time. It's not a static thing, this idea that people cling to of how their world or their country is meant to be, and lament the fact that it's different to how it was 50 years ago. That is every culture and society in the world. Everywhere, ever, has always changed over time. And the fact that nobody at the top of UK politics is willing to say that. They go through this same charade about trying to cut immigration numbers just for the sake of it. I mean, this is the most anti-immigration government in decades, and yet they've just presided over a record number of immigration, and it just shows how much their rhetoric is nonsense. And I think a lot of them would admit in private that they know it's true, but they've ended up with this political ecosystem that it seems to play well, and it seems to play well with people whose votes somehow are desired by the main political parties. That if you shout and bang the drum against immigration, then that'll get a good reaction, a good response, and good headlines from the psychopathic owners of all the right-wing newspapers. I mean, James Cleverly, I think his mother's from Sierra Leone, and I remember a while ago Frankie Boyle talking about that, the fact that, we have people in government who are the children of immigrants, or immigrants themselves, arguing against their own existence, because a lot of the people making these arguments in the government are trying to implement rules that would have blocked the immigration of their own parents. And it's hard to get your head round that kind of self-loathing. The minimum income required for British citizens now, if you want to bring a foreign family member or a partner to live with them in the UK, it was $18,600 before. Now it's $38,700 a year. And this is slightly different, because this actually attacks UK citizens as much as it's attacking immigrants, because people fall in love. People fall in love when they're on holiday. Maybe people are abroad. Maybe people are visiting here. And if people fall in love, they should be able to live their lives together if that's what they want. But now that will only happen if you're rich enough to make it happen. I mean, how many people earn $38,700 a year? Maybe to more than double the minimum income. It's sadistic. To stop people living their lives together. People that have married and made the choice to live their lives together now won't, because of rules made up by some petty-minded bigot in the Tory party. And the overseas care workers, although it was saying they were changing they were making them exempt for some cases, but they will not be able to bring their partner and children with them anymore. It's somebody that works in social care. I have a lot of colleagues that are from different parts of Europe, from Africa, from Asia, and they're coming here and helping an industry that is chronically understaffed. Look at any social care charity's website, and there will be a huge list of vacancies of jobs needing filled. So we need these people to come here to do their jobs. You know, that's not up for debate. So we're asking them to help us out, and then we're spitting in their face by saying, no, you're not bringing your family. You can come here, do the job, and then piss off, basically. Don't be thinking you're actually welcome here. Don't be thinking you can make this place your home. It's just... And then we're going to think, well, we're going to expect them to come here. Britain's not the only country that people can go to. You know, they'll go somewhere else, and there'll be care workers there, and they'll be caring for people there, and they'll not be caring for people here. So who's missing out there? It's not the would-be immigrant, it's the people in social care that require assistance, require help. They're the ones that are getting hammered now with these new regulations. They're also increasing the annual fee for visa holders to pay to use the NHS. It's known as the Immigration Health Surcharge. It was £624, now it's over £1,000. Why should they not get access to the NHS for free the same as us? If they're here and they're working and they're paying tax, they're already contributing to the NHS. And it just seems like it's just an easy... It's like a shakedown. You know, they've got them over a barrel, so they're just slapping this on to just try and squeeze some more money out of them, and it's distasteful. At the very least, it's distasteful, and it's a cash grab, and you shouldn't treat people like this. Also, there's changes to the graduate visa. As it currently stands, someone can stay in the country for at least 2 years after they successfully complete their course, and now they're reviewing this, what come out of it. Given the noises and the regulations they're already announcing, I don't think they're going to be increasing that time. I think they're going to be decreasing it. And is it not good to have smart people come to your country? If people are graduating in different university courses and getting qualified and things, is it not good that they're hanging around to use their skills and their knowledge to benefit the UK? But as soon as they're graduating, we might be turning around telling them to get out. And it's so depressing. It really is depressing. We need to get out of this UK union. Scotland needs to get out of it, because these things that are just becoming accepted, uncontested rules of political debate, and one of them is immigration is wrong, immigration is bad, and the Labour Party's not challenging it. The Tories seem obsessed with it, and it's completely alien to how I think in my politics, and I think of most people in Scotland. You know, we've got our bigots, we've got our right-wing, swivel-eyed lunatics that are obsessed with immigration, but they don't set the tone, they don't set the terms of the debate. They're screaming in the fringes mostly, and that's where they should be. That's where they deserve to be. But we've got people at the heart of the UK government just making sweeping changes to the immigration rules just to bring down some arbitrary number. I mean, what number's okay? What number will they be happy with? Is it 0? I think it might be 0. Maybe they're okay if you're a foreign billionaire or a millionaire. Would a millionaire be okay? Would they be allowed in? Because after all, they might have principles, but they all love money more than that. Maybe the Tories are alright with immigrants if they've got enough money in their pocket. Because after all, if they've got money in their pocket, that money might find their way into the Tories' pocket. That's the end of the podcast for this evening. I want to wish everybody that's listening a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year when it comes. We'll be taking a short break now at the end of Season 6. We'll be back with Season 7 sometime in the spring. If you miss us between now, you can find all our previous podcasts at leftungagged.org, as well as written articles. You can also sign up for our free newsletter and catch back episodes of the Talking Sense podcast with Kat and Erin. And if you've got anything you want us to talk about next season, you can tweet us at _ungagged, hashtag Holyrude Ungagged, or drop us an email, ungaggedleft@gmail.com, putting Holyrude Ungagged in the subject line. And if you want to join our thriving Signal group, then you can chat to us there and get involved with Ungagged. So just get in touch on any of our social media platforms. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please give us 5 stars on whatever podcast platform you use. Until then, have fun, be good, and be lucky.